Kensington. How you doing, King?
Well, first of all, at that time I was producing radio shows, principally dramas and satire. And I think partially because CTV got there first with Excuse My French, the CBC said, we've got to do something. And John Hirsch said, it's insane that we don't have a half-hour popular comedy on the air. And he asked his old friend, Perry Rosemont, to come up with something. And Perry came up with the notion of a mensch in an ethnic background, in an ethnic neighborhood, where the thrust of the show would be the interaction between men sitting around in the back of a store talking about topical events that happened that week. And that was the heart of the concept. There were things wrong with it that they didn't realize at the time, and one of them was that it was very hard to do a show that way, to wait that long in order to put it on the air. The other thing was I think, their erroneous belief that the audience would really be interested on a week in, week out, year in, year out commentary on news events. The feeling that my partner Louis Del Grande and I had when we took on the show was that those were the very things that people wanted to get away from. They wanted to just sit back and be entertained.
Do you play any water sports?
Water sports?
Herb and I tried for 2 years to get a kid. Nothing. So one day, Herb put on a snorkel, and 2 weeks later, #1 was on the way.
A snorkel?
Yeah. I said to Herb, Herb, when are we most relaxed? And he said, when we're snorkeling. So I said, well, let's pretend we're snorkeling. And you know something? We've been snorkeling ever since.
It didn't become successful in the perception of the Canadian audience and the press, and this is important to me, until it sold to the United States. As soon as it sold to the United States as a syndicated show in 1976, as soon as the sale was made, the very people who said it was crap started to hold it up as the paragon of Canadian sitcom production. There's a commentary there that we could explore endlessly, but we won't. Because of the willingness of Al Waxman to work hard to promote the show, it is still perceived as being, I think, the most successful Canadian sitcom. After 5 years of doing King of Kensington, it got a little tough. Unlike the Americans, who can afford to have 7 or 8 people on staff writing, we can't. We have no one on staff writing, other than myself. It was the time when there was a lot of problems in Quebec, and one day driving to work I thought to myself, you know, somebody should really put French Canadians on the English network so that we can humanize them and make them entertaining and likable. Because we knew from research that we'd done that the French-Canadian accents would turn off a large portion of the English-speaking audience, and it did. When we showed the pilot to a test audience, a fist fight just about broke out. Well, that told us something. It said that we were dealing with emotions in 1979 that were very strong on this thing, and that we were going to lose a lot of audience by virtue of the fact that we were putting French Canadians on the air. How extraordinary. And what a commentary. But it was the actual case. We proceeded with it and won about 1 million viewers a week, just under 1 million viewers a week. Our last episode of Flappers was 1.5 million, which is one of the highest ratings we've ever had for any of the shows we've ever done. And yet, interestingly enough, the CBC has never seen fit to syndicate it, to strip it. It's sold all over the world except in North America.
So it's the middle of the week. Business is entitled to be off.
Doesn't have to be. Hi there. How are you doing? I'd like to introduce you to your ticket to a happy future.
Mickey Ritz, public relations expert.
That's me, riding the wave of the future. How would you like me to put the club on everyone's lips?
And how will you do that?
I'll kiss him with a rubber stamp. Can you believe that? I only know 4 jokes.
Really? What are the other 4?
It was more popular in some respects than King because I think it had a more devoted audience. The people who liked Flappers adored Flappers. They were crazy about it.
They did adore it, yeah.
But unfortunately, I guess there weren't that many of them. And it had, as I say, some strikes against it in terms of ever getting the size of audience that we had hoped for, other than that wonderful 1.5 million that ended the series. The show was stopped by a strike. The CBC went on strike, and for one or another reasons, we never got the momentum generated again, and we just let it go. By that time, I had got involved in Hangin' In, and I was ready to go on with that. When the Taffner organization heard about Hangin' In, they immediately came up to see me because they had syndicated King and they had syndicated Flappers, and I was a hot commodity with them for a little while. So they said, "We heard about your new show. If you will take out all the serious stuff and make it purely funny, which we know you can do, we can almost guarantee you up front an American syndication." Now that's very attractive because you're talking real money. As the creator of the show and as the co-writer of every episode, I can make big bucks. However, I didn't want to do that, and neither did John Kennedy, the head of TV drama. We thought, no, the more challenging thing is to try to make it different, so that when the audience sees it, they'll say, this is different. Is it as good, or is it not as good, or what is this? And hopefully, if you do that correctly, as I think we did on King, and as I think we did on Flappers, the differences won't be perceived as qualitatively inferior. They'll simply be perceived as different. And the difference can be equated as Canadian. Now, over the years, because the show's been on the air for a long, long, long time, that started to shift a little. As we ran out of stories that could grab you and hold you and concern you, we tended to become more purely entertainment-oriented.
Forget my feelings of love, feel it. For all my life I'll feel it. I wish I'd never met you, girl. You'll never come again. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. Trying
Nice kitchen.
Thanks.
All right, rolling down on my face.
I hate to do this, but I have no choice.
Feelings of love.
All right, that's it. That is it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
And that's the point that we have reached now with Hangin' In, where I made the decision that I would not do another year of Hangin' In, but wanted to do something else. And so we're at the point now of pitching to the network. In fact, we sent them a cassette last week, a new series that has some of the characteristics of Hangin' In the sense that it's still geared towards principally a teenage audience. Hangin' In was extremely successful in that respect. But it will star new people, it will have a new locale, it will be a different show. And we'll see whether they pick that up, whether the network picks that up, and it will become part of the King of Kensington, Flappers, Hangin' In, and the new show called Halfway There, Continuum. Continuum because the people who have done all shows, all the series, are still with me. We have a little industry, and I don't want to break it up.